Hello, wonderful students. Welcome to our flipped lesson on external text structures. So you're probably wondering to yourself, what are these things? I guarantee you that you have all encountered external text structures at some point in time, although you might not recognize this terminology. By the end of this lesson, you'll be familiar with what external text structures are. You'll know some examples of them, and you'll be thinking about how they help us as readers. Consider this for a moment. Which of these two texts would you prefer to read? Example 1 or example 2? When you look at them side by side, I bet a lot of us would pick example 2. Not necessarily because of the content, although this does sound like a compelling article, but rather because of the visual. When you look at those two side by side, the text on the left is boring. It's size 12, black font. There are paragraphs, but nothing really exciting, nothing that's going to grab your attention. The article on the right has photographs, has different colored text, has other images and captions that make the text more engaging and probably also make the text a little bit easier to comprehend. This is because of external text structures. Now let's take a moment and break down this definition, external text structure. Pause the video for a second and think about how you would define each of those words. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you looked at external and thought of outside of. Maybe you thought about how skin is an external organ. Maybe you thought about how an exit leads you outside of the building. Text is an information source. Now, we're most familiar with text as a reading, but text can be all kinds of things. It could be a recording, it could be a video, it could be a news broadcast, a podcast, just anything that gives you information. And structure is something that provides order or organization to an item. Without structure, our item falls apart. It doesn't stand up. So if we synthesize these definitions, we think of external text structures as an organizational tool that is outside of an information source. So to make this a little bit easier, we think of external text structures as visual organizational tools used by writers to help make nonfiction easier to comprehend. Now, external text structures can come up in all kinds of genres, but they most often appear in nonfiction, in texts that it might be a little confusing to understand or very, very fact-based. External text structures help to add interest to pieces, but they certainly help with comprehension as well. Now, I'd like for you to go to your notes for today. If you look at the front page, you will see this exact same chart. This gives us a list of different external text structures, their purpose in a text, and some examples of how these are used. Now, I bet if you look at that list on the very far left, you will notice some words that are very, very familiar to you. You know what a title is. You should be familiar with headings, indentation, graphics, photographs. What I'd like for you to do is to pause the video right now, go ahead and read over this chart, and then take some time to color code your chart to match the one on the screen. So pause the video, come back when you're done. Welcome back. Now what we're going to do is look at some of these external text structures in action and think about how they impact a text. So go ahead and flip your note sheet over. You should see an article that looks like this, Comedy versus Tragedy. Get to know the laughter and tears behind Shakespeare's plays. What I'd like for you to do is, using that same color scheme that you just used to code the front page of these notes, go ahead and try to identify the different external text structures that are used in this article. Pause the video and come back when you're done. Okay, let's see how you did. Now, at the very top of our article, we have the title. This should stand out to us for a couple of reasons. Number one, the text is larger. You'll notice on the actual article copy that we're seeing here on the screen that the title is in color. That helps it to stand out to us. It also comes at the very top of the text, which indicates its importance and gives us a guide for the entire piece. Now, directly below that title is the subtitle. Get to know the laughter and tears behind Shakespeare's plays. Think about that prefix sub. What are some other words that you know of that contain it? Hopefully, you thought of maybe subway or submarine. Those are both different modes of transportation that happen underground. And hopefully that helped you to get to the meaning that sub means under. This makes sense, noting that our subtitle comes underneath of our title. Now, not every piece of text is going to have a subtitle, although many nonfiction pieces do, because the subtitle helps us to get some more detailed information about what the piece is about. Typically, and as you'll notice here, the text is not as large, it's not going to stand out and pop out to you as a reader, but you do want to take care to notice it. All right, let's move on later down the page. Next, we have headings. You'll notice here that we have comedies, and tragedies is also a heading as well. These are going to help us to compare and contrast the different sections of this article. Now notice what is special about the headings. They have information underneath them, and they are formatted exactly the same. This helps with that organizational piece to let you know as a reader that when you see it again, you're going to start a new section with new information. And just like our title had a subtitle, in this article, our heading has a subheading, and there are several. Under comedies, we have protagonists, plot, tone, love triangles, mistaken identities, and ending. We use these subtitles to tell us what that small section is going to be about in relation to the heading of comedies. Similarly, under the tragedies heading, we have the subheadings of protagonist, plot, and tone, just like we did with comedies, but then it changes to include supernatural beings and bad weather. This helps us to know that all of these features are going to be found in a tragedy, just like the heading indicates. We also have some indentation happening to let us know that we're starting a paragraph that you should be very familiar with. And then we have something that's very special, especially to informational text. This is called a sidebar. Now it's a bit of a misnomer because a sidebar does not necessarily have to come on the side of a page, although it typically does. Very rarely does it come directly in the center. But the sidebar allows us to get some related information to what's going on in the actual text, but have it not completely interrupt the flow of the information being shared. You'll notice here that the sidebar is called Write On, little play on words there, and it gives us information about a type of writing that could be done to support the reading happening on this page. So related information, but not something that necessarily needs to go in the body of the text. We also have graphics. Now notice that this image is not something that's drawn by hand, it's not taken with a camera, but would be generated by a computer. Graphics can also include things like graphs and charts that help us to visually see data. We also have photographs. These photographs would come from a camera. These are stills from different movies and plays of Shakespeare performances. So these are actual people photographs. And to help make these photographs easier to understand, we have captions. Now notice here again, there are two captions on the page, one under each photograph, and they're formatted exactly the same, again to help as a visual clue to the reader that this is giving us information about the picture above it. And then our final external text structure being used here is a footnote. Now you'll note that the footnote comes at the bottom of the page, just like your feet are at the bottom of your body. And you'll also note that the number of the footnote corresponds with the number earlier in the text. That is the author or the editor's way of providing you with some important information that you might not get within that actual text. So you go down to the bottom of the page to learn a little bit more. Oftentimes you'll get some background information about a particular person, or you might get a pronunciation or a definition of an unfamiliar word. So there you have it, external text structures at work. Be sure that you have color-coded these on your notes page to match the front of your notes so that you see exact examples of the different external text structures at work. So this brings us to the end of our lesson. But before we go, I want you to think about something. Be prepared to explore these questions and your responses to them at the beginning of class tomorrow when we go over any other questions you might have from the lesson. So think about it. How can knowing about external text structures enhance a person's ability to understand what he or she reads? Also, when have external text structures helped you as a reader? Think about different things that you've read before or that maybe you read on an ongoing basis. Think back to that very first example that we opened our flipped lesson with, where we had those two passages, one that had external text structures and one that didn't. Think about how those might help you out. Thanks for joining us for our flipped lesson on external text structures. We'll see you in class soon.